Thank you, Dawn. Good day, everyone. As indicated, I'm Nthabiseng from the South African Qualifications Authority. I'm with my colleague here, Omotola, over there. She is going to take some of the questions that are directed to us. Thank you. My presentation will focus on recognition practices in South Africa, emphasizing prior learning and exploring small units of learning. This presentation will provide an overview about the South African Qualifications Authority and the South African National Qualifications Framework. We'll also touch on recognizing learning and small units of learning. And then in reflection, we'll also look at the importance of RPL and small units of learning and how they are integrated and recognized. The South African Qualifications Authority is a public entity established in 1995 by an Act of Parliament. It is a regulatory body and a custodian of the South African National Qualifications Framework. SAQA is located in the administrative capital city of Pretoria in South Africa and comprises of about 100 committed staff. With regards to the South African National Qualifications Framework, it is a comprehensive system for the classification, registration, publication of quality assured national qualifications and part qualifications. Comprises of 3 sub-frameworks, each overseen by a quality council. The NQF also established the 10-level framework. Level 1 to 4 focuses on the schooling system, and level 5 to 10 is on the higher education system. And then from level 1 to 8 is the occupational and trades sub-framework. The key objectives of this NQF is to facilitate access and mobility, to promote redress of the past inequalities and support progression in education careers. This slide provides a snapshot of legislative evolution of the NQF. It looks too busy, but I'm only going to focus on specific years. In 1995, the SAQA Act established the SAQA with the 8-level framework. And then in 2008, the NQF was reviewed to include the 10-level framework and also establish the 3 sub-frameworks that I spoke to in the previous slide. And then fast forward to 2019, the NQF Act was amended. And in this Amendment Act, it gave added mandate to SAQA to look at misrepresented qualifications and fraudulent qualifications, to record them and report on them. In 2021, the Amendment Act, NQF Act, was promulgated. And between 2002 and 2021, a range of legislation, including policies and regulations, were developed. And this gave rise to giving more opportunities for recognition. Why are we recognizing? Simply put, is that we are recognizing to acknowledge and record learning from formal, non-formal, and informal experiences. And we also recognize to include mechanism for authentication of international qualifications. Why are we doing that? Is to promote flexibility, mobility, and lifelong learning, and also to liberate and promote inclusivity. In South Africa, the NQF is the principal instrument for recognition in South Africa and is underpinned by several pillars, including recognition of prior learning, articulation, and credit accumulation and transfer. Also, small units of learning are included as part of recognition, but is not yet formally implemented. Research has shown that recognition is generally understood in a conceptual framework comprising several dimensions. The first dimension being qualifications and part qualifications. These are the formal learning that has defined purposes, and they also include international qualifications. Dimension number 2, skills development and employability. This refers to the much needed skills in the industry, and they are not formally recognized. Dimension number 3 speaks to formal and informal learning. This is learning that is not recognized on the NQF but promotes workplace practices. Some of these are professional designations, your board exams. Dimension number 4 is linked to dimension number 3. These are the type of learning that are self-directed and enhances personal development. The last dimension is digital economies and societies. Here we're talking for industrial revolution technologies, and we explore how 4IR can be used to recognize and validate learning. There are different forms of RPL that exist within the South African qualifications and framework. Among others are RPL for access to a formal qualification and RPL for credit or exemption towards a qualification. And these RPL are facilitated by providers, and these providers of higher education. There's also RPL for artisans to gain a recorded trade, and also RPL for employment that is recognized by employers. And then we're looking at what is RPL. In South Africa, the RPL is defined as the principles and processes through which prior learning and skills of a person are made visible, mediated and assessed for alternative access and admission, recognition and certification, or further learning and development. Simply put, RPL is a way of a learner to get recognition for the skills and knowledge they already have, even if they do not get in a classroom setting through formal education. In 2021, SAQA embarked on a system-wide study with the aim of understanding the implementation and impact of RPL and other recognition practices on the NQF. These were some of the questions that were asked in the survey, and this survey involved key role players responsible for RPL policy development and implementation, such as the Department of Higher Education and Training in South Africa, the quality councils, education and training providers, as well as professional bodies that are awarding professional designations. Some of the success stories were that they enabled learning pathways through personalized assistance. Learners were able to get one-on-one experiences through RPL process. Individual approach in higher education, various higher education institutions. This was not a one-size-fits-all approach. Each institution had their own approach towards RPL processes. Another success story was through awarding professional designations. And lastly, national policies have informed organization practices, meaning that through the national RPL policy developed by SAQA, these institutions were able to develop their own policies. Despite success stories of RPL, several challenges remain, and these are lengthy and complicated processes of RPL. Some of the previous speakers spoke about the process. They also shown that there's lack of trust in recognizing learning. It's between the RPL practitioner and the learner. So it's not, some of these are not being quality assured. And the bigger issue being lack of resources and associated costs in implementing RPL. Colleagues, while some of these challenges have persisted, SAQA has explored some new solutions in addition to RPL and other recognition mechanisms, such as small units of learning or micro-credentials. Research has shown that there is no universal or common terminology of micro-credentials, which is widely used but not yet adopted and agreed upon globally. In South Africa, small units of learning exist in a form of unit standards. The definition and meaning of micro-credential and unit standards are reflecting similar attributes. Although the small units of learning are predominantly found in the occupational or vocational space, they are also found in the higher education in a form of short courses and short learning programs. There are criticisms around these small units of learning. Some say that they fragment learning by focusing on task performances at the expense of knowledge, meaning that knowledge component is being compromised. Looking at the characteristics of a micro-credential such as portability, flexibility, quality assured, assessed, and responsive to labor market needs. Some of these characteristics apply to unit standards in the South African NQF. These are some of the key drivers and attributors to micro-credentials and are coming from the global discourses, the EDIS Convention, and are presumed to be upskilling and reskilling the workforce, acquisition of new skills in those without prior or formal qualifications, and to equip learners with specific knowledge, skills, and competencies. Another driver is that they are responding to the national development policies, which speaks to economic reconstruction and recovery plan for the national digital and future skills. There has been some talks within SAQA regarding micro-credentials and other key stakeholders, such as the Department of Higher Education and Training, quality councils, and some higher education institutions on the recognition of small units of learning and possible inclusion of such on the National Qualifications Framework since 2021. This was followed by research and benchmarking exercise. This led to the development of a research paper and a discussion document on small units of learning. In April this year, an internal task team was then formed to formulate a national position on micro-credentials. This is still a work in progress. We haven't yet finalized the position. And then again, SAQA is also involved in a number of projects outside of South Africa. SAQA is participating in a European Union-funded project called POMISA. It is a potential of micro-credentials in Southern Africa, which seeks to develop frameworks and implement micro-credential in Southern Africa, in the SADC region. It is also participating in other forums, like the African Continental Qualifications Framework. And even globally, like today, we are here talking about recognition of micro-credentials. As part of recognition, the NQF is leveraging data to inform policy and decision-making. We have a system for recognizing learning in South Africa. This system is the NQF Management Information System. It is an integrated system that facilitates the management of the National Qualifications Framework. It has over 11,000 registered qualifications and more than 23 million learners. This some of the records that are found in the NQF MIS is record of RPL achievements. As shown here, there's over 123,000 learner achievements through RPL. Also found in the NQF MIS is the unit standards registered on the NQF. We spoke about unit standards being comparable to micro-credentials. We also have record of such. Some of the concerns raised when interacting with the stakeholders are listed here. I'm not going to talk much about them. And then these are some of these discussions we heard as a task team. One of the key issues was the naming convention. Since we don't have a global naming convention, some are calling it small units of learning, others are calling it micro-credentials. So some of the questions that we wanted to address, which we don't have answers to, what should we call it? Should it be micro degree, micro-credential, micro or part qualification? In addressing the form and attributes, we asked the following questions. What is the characteristics of these small units of learning or micro-credentials? What is the difference between them? And should the current unit standards or other forms of unit of learning be these? Who should offer them? Should it be private or public higher institutions, skills development providers, or professional bodies? And if we really recognize them, who should regulate them? How should they be recorded? Since we already have a recording system at SAQA, should credit values be limited or not? And the biggest issue or question was, how will the principle of staking work across the three sub-frameworks, because they don't operate the same? How should they be offered? Should it be online only or combination of both? And lastly, how will the concept of badging work in recognizing and certification of this unit small learning? In summary, we acknowledge that both RPL and small units of learning are important for recognition purposes and for providing access and creating opportunities for lifelong learning. Colleagues, in conclusion, I want to sum up that current discussions on digital credentialing, micro-credentials, and the broader shift towards recognizing all types of learning prompted SAQA to work towards towards recognizing how the NQF can drive transformation for all learners in South Africa for lifelong learning. Thank you.
So we have a couple of minutes for questions. Tola, I'm wondering if you can help me with a mic just in the audience, and as we switch over to the next presentation. Thanks very much for that. I have one question for you, and that is, you were talking about credit and not for credit. So what would not for credit be, and what would be who would be interested in not for credit in your different pillars? Like, say, would employers be interested in not for credit micro-credentials? Could you have stacking for them that would not have a credit but have value in the workplace?
Thank you for that question, Don. Like I said, we're saying we have a number of questions that we don't have answers to. That is why we are here. We need your help in responding to those questions. But currently, unit standards as small units of learning have credits, and that will be another way of recognizing them and giving value to small units of learning.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you so much for your presentation. I'm just, as I mentioned it, as I was introducing myself, one of the projects that we have running across the United States is called Credential As You Go. And if you go to our website, which is credentialasyogo.org, I think there'll be some things there that can help you out. But on the terminology, one of the things that we went for was incremental credentialing. And the reason was because everything was so crazy in terms of all the different names that everybody is using and stuff. So that's just one thing I'm offering. We've done quite a bit of research as well. And we have 54 institutions in our network that we've been studying doing this, as well as 21 of them that we've gone a deep dive into. And some of that results are in research reports on the website, but I'd be more than happy to share with you some of the findings that we're finding that might help you with some of your thinking there. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We'll chat to you later.
On your graphic where you showed the value chain, something that really struck me that you maybe are doing differently than a lot of us is thinking of RPL not just through the lens of higher education, but through employer and trade association recognition. And I'm wondering if you're having any findings with that, if industry is valuing RPL, does that sort of nudge higher education to not get left behind?
Yes, I'll take that a little bit. I think in our context, we are trying to get industry involved. Right now, RPL is mainly focused on the third sub-framework of the NQF. The South African NQF is so interesting because of the different players and the different nuances that exist. So on the occupational or vocational, like, you know, we would say sector, that's where it really is pumping. With the higher education, there's a little bit of a lack of trust. You know, I can't just accept you to study this just because you've passed a few assessments. So RPL is still a little bit on the dicey side. But with industry and within professional space where we should be taking it forward, there's a little bit of a resistance, if I can call it that way. But that's where SAQA comes into play to say, how do we come together to overcome these barriers?
Since we have a little bit of time, I would like to try response to Don, your question earlier. Because I'm working in many countries where people are just not interested in credits. They just want some document validating, recognizing their competence so they get more money. And the only name I could find is Certificate of Labor Market Competence. Has nothing to do with a micro-credential, nothing to do with a qualification, but we see that a lot, you know. And what is difficult with the French system is precisely because it has both level, you know. It has value in the educational and training system, and it has value in the labor market. So you have really to cover a lot of ground when you do the assessment, and that's a bit tricky. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.